Greetings, travelers. I'm your host, the C-Dot that knows a lot, Dr. Waluigi. With the continuing popularity of the He-Man and She-Ra series, it was only a matter of time before we got a live-action movie that, while not a sophisticated piece of art, is beloved by many old-school fans of He-Man. This is my look at the 1987 live-action film, Masters of the Universe. The movie was produced by the famous B-movie production company Cannon Films. Many people will recognize them for creating many cult classic films such as Life Force, Highlander, and The Hitcher, just to name a few. The making of the movie was a complete disaster, with the script having to be constantly changed, Mattel having a solid grip on the making of the film, and even the film going over budget, and the director, Gary Goddard, having to pay out of his own pocket to finish the movie because Mattel didn't pay for their half of the movie's production on time. Unsurprisingly, the film was a box office bomb, making only $17.3 million against its original $22 million budget, with many critics claiming it to be a Conan Star Wars ripoff or saying that the film was an underwhelming snorefest. Did we watch the same movie? Cause I find that the film is a campy, fun sword and sorcery movie that has great fight scenes and an amazing music score, which a lot of other fans seem to agree, as the movie has gained a cult following over the years, being one that many fans of He-Man, as well as of the sword and sorcery, have found great charm and enjoyment in it. The movie follows He-Man and his friends who must try to defeat Skeletor after he gains control of Castle Grayskull after he kidnaps the sorceress. Skeletor then intends to invade and conquer other worlds with the power of the invention Evil-Lyn stole from a scientist named Gwildor, the Cosmic Key. Can He-Man stop Skeletor's invasion and save the universe from his dark, twisted rule? Or will Skeletor become the new ruler of Castle Grayskull and become the master of the universe? The cast of this movie is, in my opinion, really great and does a great job with the roles that they were given, with only one exception. I'd say the best actor in the movie is Frank Langella, who plays Skeletor. He made the character much darker and sinister while also keeping some of the silliness of the original, at least when he's making a monologue. This is a great interpretation of Skeletor, and one I'm surprised is just as well remembered as the original. Plus, it's nice to know that Frank did this because his son was a huge fan of He-Man and wanted to be a part of his life. We even get a sly and scary version of Evil-Lyn, who is played by the criminally underappreciated actress Meg Foster. We sadly do still get the dumb muscle type of characters with the bounty hunters that Evil-Lyn hires that were just created to sell some more toys, but they aren't too bad. The heroes in this show are much the same as their show counterparts, but thankfully we don't have to hear Teela's obsessive whining and complaining. If I have to mention one downside to the cast, it's with who they got to play He-Man. Many fans of Rocky will recognize the actor playing He-Man as Dolph Lundgren, who played Ivan Drago in Rocky IV and Creed II. I don't think he's a bad choice to play He-Man, as he does give him more of a stoic warrior type character, but his accent can get distracting in some places. I don't blame the director or Dolph Lundgren for this, as this was Dolph's third movie, and he had to learn his lines quickly while speaking perfect English, which the actor hadn't quite perfected yet. But I won't lie and say that his accent does become distracting, as it changes from being prominent in some scenes to having it be unnoticeable in others. Like I said, it's nobody's fault, but if you're going into this film having only seen the show, it may come as a bit of a shock that He-Man sounds this way, unless you're familiar with the actor. Much like how the show had great backgrounds, this movie's costume and production design is fantastic. The interior of Castle Grayskull is incredible, as it was a combination of two sound stages that were built next to each other, which the walls were torn down to make the interior big enough. What surprised me the most after learning about this movie's production history is how the designs for this movie were based on the legendary comic book writer Jack Kirby's New Gods series. Which does make sense since some of the comics were made by DC, so taking inspiration from Mr. Kirby's series and having the show be written by three of the writers of the DCAU, it really is quite impressive how much DC material is in this movie. The costumes are also what made this movie great to watch. While I'm not a fan of Man-at-Arms or the other minor villains designs for the movie, the rest of the costumes look great and still hold up even after so many years, especially Skeletor, who is the best looking character in the whole movie. Even when he gets the full power of Grayskull, he still looks amazing, and I can only imagine the kind of patience and sweat that Frank Langella had to go through. The music is also something I enjoy in this movie. While I do recognize that most people aren't a huge fan of 80s movie soundtracks, I love them for just how epic they sound. From The Neverending Story to Back to the Future, the 80s had the most kick-ass soundtracks of all time, and this movie is no exception to that rule. The music was done by Bill Conti, who has done a lot of scores for some of the greatest 70s and 80s movies, including the Karate Kid and Rocky movies. He makes this movie come alive and uses great synth music, which makes this movie sound just as epic and fantastical as the show it was based on. But as how close this movie was to giving He-Man fans what we wanted to see, there were some unfortunate tropes of the time with... He-Man and crew coming to our world. Yeah, the rest of the movie follows He-Man and his friends, including Gwildor, who is played by the legendary dwarf actor Billy Barty, taking the cosmic key to Earth where they do the whole aliens not understanding our way of life. Which is kinda dumb since not only has He-Man met several humans in the TV show, but He-Man's own mother is from Earth, so she would have told him all about Earth, or at least the version of Earth that she knew. On top of that, the human characters they interact with are just boring and pointless to the story. We follow a girl played by Courtney Cox before she went on to Friends, and her boyfriend played by Barry Livingston, who's helping her deal with the death of her parents, and it basically plays like two completely different movies until it all comes crashing down at the end of the movie. Speaking of Back to the Future, the principal from the first movie, James Tolkan, is in this as a cop who does get annoying until he gets the chance to fight Skeletor's army at the end of the movie. So there you go. Honestly though, that's the only major problem with the movie. Yeah, the movie does have other issues too, such as the way certain effects are handled due to the time the movie came out, but it could have been handled a lot worse. While I wouldn't consider this the best 80s sword and sorcery movie, nor do I consider it the best He-Man movie, I think that the movie has a charm to it that many others, like me, have found. Its characters are lovable and cast memorable, the fight scenes do still hold up, even with the limitations of the effects and budget, and the score is one of the best I've heard in a franchise that isn't really well known for its music. Overall, I give Masters of the Universe a 7 out of 10. This movie won't please everybody, but it will take you on a great journey beyond the stars. Thanks for watching, I'm Dr. Waluigi, and remember, don't judge a book by its cover, cause you'll never know what's inside. Good night, everyone.
My name is Adam of Grayskull. When good is threatened by the power of Eternia,